Good morning, everyone. As the organizer of the Munich Security Conference, I have to confess that I am really impressed. This is not for me the first time to be at the Doha Forum, but this event is growing, and you know, I believe that competition is actually good to have, and I'm pleased to see that the Doha Forum has emerged as a major event to discuss not only the situation in the region, and as we just heard from Ambassador Khalid, there are very interesting processes, negotiating processes ongoing, hopefully with results in the very near future. But I'm so pleased to have these two brilliant leaders with me here this morning, both, interestingly enough, with a military expertise background. I think you were flying aircraft in your earlier period.
I was happier then.
Exactly. And of course, the Turkish defense minister is, as far as I know, not only one of the senior-most Turkish generals, he has had extremely important command positions in the Turkish army over the years. So welcome to both of you this morning. Now, we heard from the Turkish minister earlier about the changing nature of the threat. Hybrid, you mentioned hybrid threats. And I would like to turn first to our host here, to the host government, to the Minister of Qatar. When we look at the global security situation, when we look at the regional security situation, we find that the nature of war, the nature of conflict, has changed significantly. Look, I mean, from my European point of view, our conflicts used to be, you know, country A against country B, Germany against France, or the Soviet Union against Germany, for example. When I look at, with very rare exceptions today, when I look at all these conflicts, whether it's in Yemen or in Syria or in Afghanistan, regardless which one of the many bloody conflicts we look at today, they don't seem to follow this classic model of state A trying to invade state B, dominating your neighbor. It seems to be more a conflict, you know, between Afghans or between Syrians. And then we have new technologies emerging. So let me turn to you, sir, and invite you to talk for a couple of minutes about how you, representing a small country in a difficult region, how you try to respond to this changing nature of the threat environment, to hybrid threats, to terrorism, and to the question of how can we build trust and alliances in a world where you don't want to be alone, because it's a dangerous world. Please.
Thank you, Ambassador. Distinguished guest, good morning. I see Doha Forum as a synergy to Munich rather than competition, dear Ambassador. So this is how I look at today challenges. That's efforts need to be all together. Now, this is a very complicated subject to touch on, but I see it this way. The wars started with a spear. Today we are talking about a sphere war. So the technology has changed, the challenges has changed. In Qatar, we approached the security on 360 degrees, and we predicted the change almost from the 95. So we started to direct our resources toward better education, technology, medical technology, being open with the people rather than creating virtual enemies. But how do I see the world today from my perspective? During the Industrial Revolution, that time the Industrial Revolution has shaped the world. Today, unless we understand carefully that there is another tsunami or another revolution called the digital revolution are next door, unless we joint effort to use this revolution in favor of our people, rather than using this for disinformation and harming each other, then I think we are facing a big challenge for so many reasons. One of them, the time is short, but one of this reason is that in the past, the state used to direct somehow the people. Today we have the people directing the states. In the past, you have a leader who pulls his people behind them. Today, people are pulling leaders behind them. So we have to be very careful when we approach this digital revolution. In Qatar, we decided, and here I remember the story of Prophet Noah, peace be upon him. God instructed him to build an ark rather than to escape to a mountain, nor to barricade himself behind walls. And we in Qatar have built our own ark to weather this flood by better education, being open with our people, direct our vision 2030 toward the government and the people. And the first step we did, I remember 20 years ago, is to cancel the information ministry, for example. Try to encourage the people to hear and know the truth rather than disinformation. So this is how I see it in general.
Thank you very much. Let me turn to Minister Akar. You spoke very eloquently a few minutes ago about how Turkey looks at the terrorist threat. Let me change the subject a little bit and invite you to tell us, if you wish, what role for the future of Turkey will alliances play? Your country has been a member of NATO now for forever, ever since NATO was created. But recently, Turkey has taken decisions that have sort of rattled us in other members of NATO quite a bit. The catchword is Russia. Is it a risk for NATO's cohesion if Turkey starts buying modern equipment from Russia? What is the relationship between Turkey and her NATO partners? You recently attended and participated in the NATO leaders meeting in London. Share with us a little bit your assessment and the way forward, from my point of view, as one of the most important members of NATO that your country is, please.
Thank you. First of all, let me clarify the my answer to your question very shortly. We are in the middle of NATO, still in the middle of NATO. We are going nowhere. We are in NATO. And because of the various reasons, we are doing this, we are doing that for the benefit of our countries, for the benefit of our nation. But never ever they are against our presence as a member of NATO. As you recall, yes, from the very beginning, since the 1952, we are a member of the NATO, and then we are fulfilling all of our responsibilities all the way within the exercises, within the operations, and then within the support of the personal support of the NATO headquarters, and always we are in dialogue with the members of the NATO. But on the other hand, as I said, we need some air and the missile defense system for the protection, for the safety of our nation and of our country. And for this, since the end of the 1990s, we tried to do our best to purchase that systems from the Western countries, including the United States, France, and others. But unfortunately, because of the different approaches of the issue, with some criteria while we were discussing the issue, bargaining with them, we couldn't succeed. We couldn't conclude the initiative, and finally, we needed to purchase that system from Russia, as you know, and as stated by Mr. President Trump before the media in Osaka, in Japan, he said. We tried to do our best to buy it from the States, but within the Obama administration, unfortunately, we couldn't conclude that the purchase. So necessarily, not as a choice, but as a necessity, we went to Russia, and we had to buy that system from, from Russians. And similarly, now we are dealing with discussing the F-35 issues, and it's an important issue, and we need it, and my country, my Air Force need it. But unfortunately, there are less of the discussion about that issue. Then there are some contrary acts in the U.S. side, and we are patiently, comprehensively trying to do our best to convince, to explain in which position we are. And we still hope to find a solution, because we are not a client of the F-35 the issue. We are the partner, and we paid almost $1.5 billion for this partnership, and then we are expecting the U.S. side and the other members of that partnership to act as we did, rightly for my country. Otherwise, necessarily, as it happened within the S-400, we will try, we will search some other ways to find a solution to our needs. So, in summary, yes, we are very much consciousness of that our responsibilities within NATO, and then we are doing every thing, whatever we are responsible for the NATO, and we are in the middle of, in the center of NATO. There is no the intention, there is no the attempt to stay away from NATO. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Let's go back, if we can, for a moment to the case of Syria. When the conflict broke out 8 years ago or so, I remember that not only in Europe, we started hearing political leaders exclaiming, Bashar Assad must go. I heard Turkish voices, Bashar Assad must go. Actually, I heard voices from Qatar, Bashar Assad must go. Now we're at the end of 2019, he's still there. So my question to both of you is, and let me start with you again, Minister, have we failed? We together, the West, our alliance, our countries? Have we failed to accomplish what we wanted to get, namely ending that conflict and creating and helping to create leadership in Syria that is less dictatorial, that would look more democratic? Have we failed? Or, and let me rephrase my question, where do we go from here? You said in your speech you hope to see the emergence of a political process, but are you very hopeful? Yeah?
Yes, I'm very hopeful. First of all, there is no failure, there is no success issue. There's a process, there's a struggle over there. Right after the outbreak of the crisis in Syria in 2011, since then we are keeping saying almost the same similar things. And we said sometimes personally to our counterparts, interlocutors, this is a very serious issue, not only for Syria, not only for Turkey, but for all of the NATO, for all of the Europe, because it is tending, it turned to be great quagmire to produce not only terrorists individually, but also terrorist organizations. So that we have to come together as NATO, as bilaterally or in any way, to take the right precautions against this crisis. But unfortunately, we failed these attempts. So we were alone. So after sometimes, let's say 2014, 2015, West, NATO started to focus on the situation in and around Syria. And then to some extent taking some precautions, and they were successful, we were successful. Also, we were within the coalition fighting against Daesh. And we launched some operations individually, nationally. But at the same time, some support of the member of the coalition forces. And then we brought the situation to this end. But at the same time, we were in a very close cooperation with the United States for this and that, and a close cooperation with the Russian Federation and Iranians to support the Geneva process, taking another initiative in Astana. Because within the Geneva process, there were some failure, that is some stop, So to move forward, we took the initiative and we came together in Astana with Iran, Russia, and we took some initiative, and to some extent we were successful. And we came together, Russia mainly, and then we got some paper about the Idlib. And in Idlib, very sensitive area, and then it was a very dramatic area. And fortunately, we took some precautions to provide to stop some possible tragic, dramatic situation, because the regime were bombing from land, from the air, even the innocent people, children, women, elderly people, and then to some extent, for instance, within the last stage, right after the 27th September, we agreed in Sochi with Russians, 2018. More than 1,000 people already killed, and almost 600, 700,000 people moved from their homes, from their lands. So working with the possible the allied countries, we tried to take some precaution to stop that sort of things. On the other hand, in parallel to this, and then finally, peacekeeping operation. After that, at the same time, we are making every possible effort to support all those ongoing initiative to to make a new constitution. This is very important, and it was very difficult at the beginning to put together all those parties. But fortunately, they came together, and maybe within the upcoming months, years, it will be made a constitution. Right after that, an election, free election, with the participation of all Syrians outside Syria or inside Syria, and then after that, legitimate government. This is our aim. This is what we are saying. All our allied countries, all our friends, through this way, and I believe that we will find a right solution for the benefit of the Syrians, Syrian brothers, but at the same time for whole region. Thank you.
Thank you very much. I mean, you were actually the foreign minister of Qatar during a substantial period during this conflict. What's your view?
Syria is a very complicated file. It needs a whole session. But as Brother Hulusi says, that it's a process now to try to save what's left of Syria. But we in Qatar, with our limited capacity, we started earlier as the time where the uprising in Dar'a started. And we tried to do everything in our hand, utilizing old relation, utilizing the possibility of reach out to all party and try to mediate at the spot. Unfortunately, things went out of hand, and Syria, what we see today. But again, the Syrian people deserve and have an obligation. We have an obligation toward the Syrian people to fulfill their purpose of, their uprising. Be frank more. I think we did not help that as the international community, if I may say, and this will take us to our title. Everybody looked at Syria from their own agenda and not from the Syrian agenda. Some has a good faith agenda. The other, unfortunately, they started with, I won't say bad faith, but totally different agenda. Now we see the burden of refugee. Most of the burden of the refugee fall on the shoulder of the neighboring country. And the neighboring country did a good job to the beyond country. They managed to stop the flee. And unfortunately, no one have appreciated this enough to joint effort to get Syria out of this mess.
2 months ago in October, the Munich Security Conference came to Doha and organized a small but high-level conference, and we had some very interesting discussions about the absence of and the need for a regional security architecture. We in Europe believed that, on the basis of our own experience, that even during the Cold War, at a time of very acute confrontation, it was possible to start a dialogue between, on the one side, the Soviet Union and the United States, those of us in NATO. So we ended up having the CSCE process, and we created an organization, the OSCE. So if I may invite you, Minister Attiyah, you represent, as I said earlier, a small country in a region with huge difficulties. You have suffered this blockade for the last couple of years with enormous also economic and financial cost. It's almost a miracle when I look at it, how your country has survived, has overcome this. But that doesn't mean that the military, the security challenges, whether it's terrorism, whether it's state-to-state conflicts, they've not been adequately addressed. So tell us a little bit, if you could, do you see any chance that, in the next 5 years, we could see the emergence of some arrangement that would allow not only Qatar to speak with Iran, but maybe Saudi Arabia to speak with Iran, and Cairo to speak with Qatar, etc. You have so many countries in the region which, in my view, should be in touch with each other, should negotiate, and there is often the absence of discussion. So are you optimistic or pessimistic about the emergence of a regional peace architecture? Please.
Yes, thank you. Even though Qatar has been faced by hyper war by all means of the term during 2017, but our position was clear from day one that the dialogue and negotiation is the shortest way to solve our issue in the region. Our sovereignty and independence is untouched on our foreign policy. This was clear from day one, and it's still the same today. Qatar, not only that, we have started encouraging our neighbors long way back to engage with Iran in an open dialogue. You cannot change geography, Ambassador. We will be living here together forever. So the only way we can go forward is to have a frank, open dialogue with all neighbors, including Iran. All the files, economic, social, security files, has to be put and brought forward on the table. And this is the only way to have a framework, a legal framework, which make this region prosperous and stable. We cannot keep fighting each other forever. One. Two, the old method of creating a virtual enemy to have internal coherence is over. As we just said in the beginning, it's a new type of revolution now. It's unconventional digital revolution. You cannot hide anything from your people today. So instead of barricading yourself behind your wall and then have to face the tsunami, which will, will take everything away, you have to be open to the other, confront your internal issue, and have a frank dialogue with your neighbors to reach to a point that you are convinced that you will have friends and ally 1,000 miles away from you. But unless you have good term with your neighbors, nobody's going to come and jeopardize the safety of their children to protect you.
Minister Akar, I mean, you have the advantage of belonging to an alliance, as you said, and I was very pleased to hear you say that you are right in the middle of NATO. You are also in the process of talking with the European Union. You've been in this process for a long time. What are Turkish views about regional institution building, regional security architecture not in your European neighborhood, but in your Asian African neighborhood, where you have a few neighbors that are not exactly the most friendly ones in the world?
Thank you. Yes, first of all, the goal for European Union never ever changed. Number one, it's essential. Secondly, as I said before, we are as a reliable, significant, and the member of NATO. We will continue in that way. But right after that, of course, necessarily for the benefit of our countries, we are having the bilateral relation with our very friendly, very allied countries. For instance, with Qatar, very friendly, very brotherly relation. And then in every sense, we are sharing our capabilities, our capacities for the safety, security of our nations. So we are exchange of the information, exchange of the sort of the experience. But at the same time, we have lots of the sort of how to say countries. In addition to that, the friendship, brotherhood. But at the same time, we need lots of things as a nation, as a country. So to meet all of those needs, we have lots of relation with many of those countries, but never ever they are not on an alternative to NATO or the EU. Thank you.
Let me turn, since we've been invited to discuss the state of the world, let me turn finally to really a global issue, and I'd be interested in both of your views. In 2009, on the floor of the Munich Security Conference, Joe Biden, then Vice President of the United States, pushed what he called the reset button with the Russian Federation. And as a consequence of that, negotiations were started, which led to the conclusion of what they call the New START agreement on the strategic intercontinental nuclear weapons. 3 years later, in 2012, again on the floor of the Munich Security Conference, the instruments of ratification of the New START agreement were exchanged between Sergei Lavrov and Mrs. Clinton, then Secretary of State. Now, if nothing happens, this agreement, which is the only one that we have governing, preventing a new nuclear strategic arms race, this agreement will run out if the United States and the Russian Federation don't quickly agree to extend it. The other agreement, which affects all of our countries, is the INF Treaty, which governs intermediate range nuclear weapons. That has now been terminated. My impression is that we are rapidly entering into a phase where there will be no arms control agreements, not on conventional arms, no regional arrangements, no limits on nuclear weapons. From my point of view, that is the least desirable situation imaginable. So what are your thoughts about this? What should we do? We as members of the United Nations, we as members of NATO, your country, my country, important countries in this part of the world with so many security risks affecting the future of your peoples. What should we do about preventing a new arms race? Can I start with you?
I think seriously we have hundreds of bottom need to be reset in this world. There are so many things we should be worried about. Today, with this information technology era, you can write an email, you can order your food, and you can order explosive. Who knows tomorrow this nuclear technology can be in reach of anybody with a laptop. So this takes us back again that we have to identify that we have a problem. All the big players, as I believe Sheikh Mohamed bin Abdurrahman yesterday said, that there should be regulation has to be put to the new world order. People have to address the issue seriously, especially the Security Council member. And if we don't face this early, I think we are going to face a new type of wars.
Mr. Akar, your views?
Yes, from the humanitarian point of view, normally, especially among the people out of the military, it's a very attractive issue to stop the arms race. But all of us very much aware of that it's impossible. It will continue. But the problem, to control in any way, putting some principles, putting some rules, regulations, and the international institution, international some pressure the agencies, make through the media and through the academic workings, we have to at least to slow down that raise and control. Otherwise, because of the defense industry, member of the defense industry, likes to do something for their initiative. So they never ever we can stop. We have the democratic values. We have democratic countries. We cannot say to do this, not do that. So we have to find some how to say some right the solution to control the arms race and the defense industry. Otherwise, it will cause lots of the accident, lots of the problem, not only for 1, 2, 3 countries, but for all over the world. Still, I didn't say yet how to say the nuclear warfare. So within the conventional how to say the arms as well create the problem. So we have to check through the United Nations and other the NGOs, media, and then the academic world in a very important role within this issue to how to say provide the right information for the politicians, for the decision makers, and for the member of the defense industry the domain. Thank you.
I could go on, and I've dozens of more questions to ask you, but I'm being told we're already in overtime, a few minutes. So let me invite the audience to give a round of applause to our 2 panelists here. Thank you, both of you. Thank you very much.